Oftentimes, I get to speak with folks about how local government works, and I always get questions like, Taylor's isn't a city? Or if I vote in the city of Malden, why is my address Greenville? Or how can some people who live in Greer be residents of Spartanburg County and others residents of Greenville County? This is especially confusing for newcomers to the Greenville area. So today, we are going deep into something that might seem simple, but actually explains a lot about how life works around here. Our producer, Nathaniel DeSantis, and I will cover the basics on counties, cities and towns, census-designated places, and zip code areas. From Moonville to Malden, from Slater to Simpsonville, and Taylor's to Travelers Rest, and for newcomers and longtimers alike, we will help you understand where you are.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the podcast. Thank you again for listening. Today, we're talking about something that's a little bit confusing. So it's confusing when our mail comes to one address, but it feels like we're actually living in another. Or we've heard a lot of people who live within Greenville County wonder why they don't get to vote in the race for Greenville's mayor. That's kind of a weird and wonderful and wacky territory that we're going to explore today. So diving right in, we're going to start from the top. Katie, what's the deal with counties?
Well, in South Carolina, we have 46 counties, and they are the broadest form of local government. So every bit of the state falls within a county. Of course, we live in Greenville County, but we have Richland, Beaufort, Horry, all the other places. So counties handle the big things for people who live within that county, like roads, public safety, courts, election, property taxes. So even if you don't live in a city or town, chances are your services come from the county.
So even if you're not in a city, you're not off the grid.
Exactly. There are asterisks on that. For instance, if you live in the county, you get services from the sheriff, and in a city, you get the police that handle law enforcement. We have a really complex system of highways, roads, and streets in the county, each of which are maintained by different bodies of government depending on their ownership.
Okay, makes sense. What about cities and towns? What's the actual difference?
Well, there's a difference from counties to cities and towns, but between cities and towns, funny enough, in South Carolina, there is no legal difference. City and town are just names. Legally, they're both incorporated municipalities. So, for instance, the city of Greenville and the town of Bluffton function the same way. They've got a mayor, they've got a council, they can pass local laws, they handle zoning, water, trash pickup, and all that.
So people choose to incorporate because of those services, the water, trash pickup, etc.
Exactly. Plus, they get more control over local development and they can collect their own taxes. So in the county of Greenville, we have 6 cities. No one chose the name town here when they incorporated, and they are Travelers Rest, Greer, Greenville, Malden, Simpsonville, and Fountain Inn. And 6 is about the norm in the number of cities within a county in South Carolina. But fun fact, Orangeburg County has the most municipalities at 17. Here's the thing, the majority of people in Greenville County do not live in an incorporated area within a city. But many people are thinking, well, wait a minute, I live in Berea, I live in Taylor's. That's something different.
Which I believe, as we've talked about on the podcast, I believe that would be called a census-designated place, right?
Exactly. These are unincorporated communities that the U.S. Census Bureau defines purely for data collection. They don't have governments, they don't make laws, but they are, of course, real places where people live. They are places like Taylor's, Five Forks, Berea, Sans Souci, Parker, Slater, Marietta. People identify with these places, but they are not technically towns or cities.
So if they're not technically towns or cities, then they don't have a city council or a mayor, presumably a post office, but all the other things, they don't have them, right?
Right. So you might have a post office, you have schools, shopping center. It really might feel like a town, but it is not incorporated. In those places, the county handles all the services.
That's kind of wild. So it's a quote town, but just really socially or culturally, not legally. I guess the question that comes to my mind based off that is who names them? How's it get its name?
I love that because to me, I think cultural connection in any place is what's really most important. And I have heard people call people the mayor of some of these places, like he is the mayor of Berea. And I love that because to me, it presumes you're not political. You just care about your neighbors. And so really, it is kind of the community that names the place. These census-designated places come from what they have been called for a long time by the people who live there. I mean, Five Forks is where roads come together, and it has long been called Five Forks even when it was rural. And it's just what it's known as. And now there's lots and lots of people who live in that area. It's kind of neat to me.
So a second ago, I had mentioned the post office, and I think that's where I get a little bit confused. Something I've noticed is that I might have a zip code that might be 29607 that covers Greenville and Malden. And I guess it's just confusing what's the difference between like zip codes, how does that tie in with everything we're talking about? So maybe we could talk about that for a second and how that affects all this.
It does get super confusing because you get your mail addressed to your home that says Travelers Rest, and yet you do not live in the city of Travelers Rest or get to vote there. Or you might get mail to Greenville, and yet you vote in Malden. So all of this has to do with the U.S. Postal Service, which is not paying attention to things like census-designated places or political boundaries. They are trying to figure out how to deliver the mail most efficiently. And so they create zip codes, like you mentioned, '07, we've got 29690, we've got 29605. They might cross city lines, they might go into incorporated and unincorporated areas. It is just there to help mail get delivered. And sometimes those boundaries align with political jurisdictions. A lot of times they don't, and it gets very confusing.
So that's the instance then where your address could say Travelers Rest, but you actually don't go vote in a Travelers Rest city election.
Exactly.
Right?
That happens all the time. People can have a city name on their address that gets delivered to their house that isn't tied to any city boundaries. It's just the name of the postal area, not the local government.
All right. Well, I'll give a quick shout out to my dad, born before zip codes were a thing. Longtime listener of the podcast. First shout out. There you go. So then let me ask the big question that I think we're all kind of wondering at this point. Why does this stuff matter?
Well, number one, you need to get home. No, I'm kidding. It's a good question. It matters because it affects your taxes, it affects your services, it affects your schools, and even who you vote for. If you are in a city, you might pay extra taxes for city services. If you're in a census-designated place or just in the county, those services might come from a different place, or sometimes not at all. You might not get some services that are available within a city. And for businesses or grant funding, it can really make a difference because those CDPs or census-designated places need to be counted in census data to help them qualify for infrastructure improvements or disaster relief. So those boundaries do matter.
One thing you did not mention, elections, voting.
Yes, it matters there too, and that's particularly relevant here in 2025 when we are recording this episode, because it is in the odd years that the cities in Greenville County have their municipal elections for city councils, for mayor, for things like water district. And so come November, all of you who live in a city need to go to the polls to choose your new city council members and in some cases, mayor.
And we've even done episodes on municipal elections, so we'll be sure to include that in the show notes, along with some other episodes that tie in really well. We've done a lot covering these individually, never as a whole. So as always, just check the show notes for that. But since we're at the end here, Katie, let's recap for the audience.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this seems so basic, but the number of questions I get on it seems to indicate it's worth lifting up to take it in mass. So counties are the main government layer within South Carolina. We have 46 of them. Cities and towns are incorporated places with their own governments within those counties. We have 6 cities in Greenville County. Census-designated places are unincorporated areas defined by the census and not local law and get their name from what people have always called them in the area. Zip code places, lastly, are mailing areas created by the post office, and they don't follow any political boundaries.
So the address that comes into your mailbox might not match the government collecting your taxes.
Exactly. So South Carolina geography is like a little Venn diagram with a whole lot of overlap.
All right. Well, that was a really great, quick, thorough, but easy to understand overview of all this. I think it will help a lot for people to understand how all this works because, I mean, it confuses me. And we've been doing this is 191 episodes of the podcast, and I'm still learning something new. I'm still confused all the time. And learning something new from the podcast, this is yet another thing we can all learn from. So everyone who's listening, thank you very much for staying tuned. And Katie, thanks for teaching us all this stuff.
Well, I'm learning every day too. And I think it would be fun to put in the show notes for all of you who are even more curious, links to how you can look at the census-designated places, zip code areas, and other political boundaries within Greenville County. So keep learning.
Hi, Simple Civics Greenville County listeners, Nathaniel here. If you've made it this far, then we think you'll really love our newsletter. Sign up for bonus content, updates, and more right in your inbox. Look for the link in the description that says newsletter to sign up, or visit us at simplecivicsgreenvillecounty.org. Find the link in the menu that says newsletter and sign up there. We'll see you again next week.